Join Henry Clay on the Lead Machine Growth Show as he takes the mystery out of leadership journey. He offers clear insights for business owners aiming to excel faster and foster organizations to make a real difference. With over 5 decades of experience, Henry reveals the core principles of effective leadership that inspire trust, evoke loyalty, and drive impactful change.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyan, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyan, your host, the Lead Machine coach and founder of the Lead Machine Mastermind and Agency. I'm dedicated to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. So whether you're just starting out or taking your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started and turn your dreams into reality. Henry Clay has spent over 50 years in many parts of the world helping leaders get clarity for their life and leadership. For the past 2 decades, he has loved helping people become trusted leaders that others want to follow. One of his favorite questions for leaders is, what guides your thinking as you bring leadership to the people you are responsible for? Which is a profound question, but that might trip up some people. He's a motivational speaker and experienced coach. He's happily married with 4 adult children and 10 grandchildren. And he's particularly interested in history, language, and the cultures of the world. Henry Clay, welcome to the show.
Glad to be with you, Paul.
Thank you so much. I'm a little bit interested in history myself. When I was in high school, I had ancient history with, I forget his name at the moment. I just can't bring it to mind. But he was so boring. Oh my God. He was a terrible teacher, I thought. I couldn't learn anything from him. I was failing the class. And then John Manu came into our school, and he was a real charismatic, athletic. He was my football coach, and we just hit it off. And I just loved history. Learning history from him was a joyful experience because he was wanting you to learn concepts rather than the mundane dates and names and things like that. Although we did learn a lot together, so I enjoyed that too.
Great.
So how did you get started out in this leadership coaching role?
Well, in my whole career, I've really enjoyed providing people with things that help them succeed in the most important areas of their life, whether that's parenting or their faith or their marriage, how to study, all these different areas. But I was a bit frustrated that over 30 years, I hadn't seen anything that kind of gave an overall clarity and simplicity that was helpful enough in terms of people leadership. So in the last 20 years, when one of the main mentors in my life sort of began to develop this framework, I thought, wow, this is it. This is so very, very helpful. And so now I usually ask people if I'm next to them on a plane or leaders anywhere, who looks to you for leadership? And the second question is, what guides your thinking as you bring leadership to these people? And the fact is, Paul, I don't find 2 in 100 that have a ready answer to that question that they're satisfied with. They look a little bit more like Santa Claus with a big bag on their back. It's got a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah.
But to rummage through their bag to think, let's see here, what might be helpful in this situation. So having an overall box top is extremely helpful and encouraging.
Yeah, and there are so many. I see this a lot as a CIO of a larger company, and even working with vendors and other companies. Especially I've worked with Delta and American Airlines and some of the really big companies. And a lot of these people that I was with were very competent people, but they weren't really great at the leadership role. Why is that?
Mhm.
Is that the
Well,
same
Paul, let
thing?
me ask you a question. What did you study in college?
I didn't go to college,
Okay, well,
but
but most people, I guess a lot of people end up in IT.
yeah,
There are different ways to get there. I
yeah,
studied mechanical engineering. Other people study medicine, law, accounting, etc. But what you realize about all those things is they don't teach you how to lead once
yeah,
you further on. And usually, if a person's successful and are in their career at least 10 years, they eventually get put in charge of somebody else's work in addition to their own.
yeah,
And they need to transition from being an independent producer to leading the work through others. And there's really no intentional clarity given to that. And so people just I talked to a even in some branches of the military, talked to someone that taught at the United States War College, PhD in leadership, and he said, "Well, in our branch of the services, we also have a 3-word framework. It's called figure it out." And the lack of clarity in terms of it's Monday, what do I do as a leader, really affects people. And and usually companies don't have a simple way of going about that. They'll just look around to see what's the main things going around these days. And that's all good stuff. I'm not saying this is mine is what we present is better. But it's an overall framework under which all the others kind of find their place.
yeah. And there's more to the story, of course, whether or not I went to college, but I did study under some great mentors, and Lou Holtz was one of them. I didn't study
Well,
directly with
yeah.
him, but I've been exposed to some great leaders, and one of my mentors that I worked for 15 years, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple years ago. I learned a lot from him, and there was a heart and soul at his core that
Mhm.
he was kind and but he challenged you.
Mm.
And I emulate him when I'm leading people, and I think about, okay, what would Dave do?
Yeah.
And of course, one of the greatest leaders, servant leaders in ever is Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
And there's a book on him, a leadership book on him. Uh, it's being a servant leader. So
Mm.
I model my style after that. Serving others and my parents were both doctors, and they were great leaders in the way that they served other people. So
Mhm.
uh, I think that's a really good quality to have in a leader is a service first kind of uh, serve first attitude. Do you
Well,
agree with that?
let me press into that a little bit, Paul, because, um, that's been such a popular and helpful, um, approach to leadership over the last 50 years and has brought so
Uh,
much value. I find that model informs more who a leader is and why they do what they do. Yeah, but it also begs the question because there are many ways of serving people. You could make sure that as the CIO, you're going to make sure everybody has the kind of coffee they want every day. What would be serving,
yeah,
but it's not what they most need you to do. In the role that you're in, the way that you can serve them the best is lead them well. And that
yeah,
brings you to the question, well, what are the elements involved in leading well? So you do it out of the servant heart, but informing people, yeah, but what does it actually look like when you do it as a leader is also very helpful. Otherwise, people can be helping in many, many ways, but not in what's most needed, which is to lead well.
yeah, totally. And you mentioned a framework. So can you unpack the framework that you're talking about?
Sure. Our framework is lead, develop, and care. Lead, develop, and care.
Hmm.
The lead part is all about the task. It's intentionally influencing and enabling people to accomplish a given task. Then there's the develop aspect, which is kind of steward of the future of teaching, modeling, and coaching and their thinking, behavior, and skills. So the develop part, the green growing edge. And then care is intentionally watching over and responding to the needs and well-being of people. And so a lot of times you'll just have the lead part because it's all about the task and people begin to feel a bit uh, a bit used at times,
Mm.
and not as visible and don't feel very valued. So if you can help a leader realize all three, these are what we call the three primary responsibilities. So we have a
Uh,
couple subpoints under them, each one that gives greater clarity. What I like to say is this framework is simple enough to be clear. It's complex enough to be useful. It's sticky enough you can remember. I can say the whole thing right now. It's visual enough you can draw it out with three circles and the subpoints, so that you can easily on a napkin share it with someone. It helps your people feel visible and valued. It's good in every area of your life because it's good for self leadership, parenting. Uh, if you're in a place of faith, in your community, at work, it's good for the rest of your life. And it'll help you become the kind of leader that people trust and want to follow.
and wow, and how did you discover this framework? You mentioned a
Well,
mentor.
my main mentor was a graduate of West Point, Vietnam War veteran, just a wonderful person that had such an impact in my life over 40 years. And he was sort of puzzling about this whole thing. And over time, he realized the drawbacks of the servant model in terms of helping you understand what am I supposed to be doing. Yeah, like I said, that's good for
Yeah.
identity and motive. It's not as
Uh-huh.
helpful in terms of a framework. And he realized there's this ancient metaphor that's, of course, in the Bible, but it's throughout the whole ancient world of the shepherd as a good figure of a leader. And I think some people that know Christianity better think that King David came up with it, Psalm 23.
Yeah.
But actually, they found King Tut's tomb, and King Tut lived 300 years before King David. And across his golden sarcophagus chest, he's got two things: a flail and a shepherd's crook.
Mhm.
Flail in the sense that he has authority to make you do what he thinks you should do. But the shepherd's staff is that he's leading like a shepherd. So you find in Babylon, Assyria, Greece, Rome, all these ancient peoples, when they talked about either gods or people that were leading well, they always talked in terms of a shepherd.
Mhm.
So then when you begin to dig into, well, what were the main elements of leading like a shepherd? It's lead, develop, and care. And
Mhm.
so that sort of got the thinking going. But then as that was, we worked on that more and came up with definitions and the subpoints. It really began to grow into a robust approach that so many have found helpful.
Yeah, and as companies grow, this company I was working for Dave, it was a logistics company. And we started out with, less than 1 million in sales. I think employee number 13. And we had a family kind of atmosphere. And somewhere along the way, those core values, I see this in many companies, the core values of the leadership uh, get lost somewhere. So if there's that caring, that development, that leadership that started the spark out doesn't get carried on. So how do organizations uh, flourish and keep those core values intact as they grow?
Yeah, leading with a developmental mindset is so critical. And of
Yeah.
course, nothing stays the same. You're always having people leaving and coming. And so you really have to you have to understand what are your thresholds and pathways. A threshold is where you go through a door. Uh, a pathway is how you walk along afterwards. So a threshold would be getting married. A pathway would be being married. Uh,
Yeah.
threshold would be having a baby, then raising the baby.
Yeah.
And so there's certain gateways in any company when you first hire on. If it's in a law firm, they might come on as a partner. So there are gateways when a person first comes in, and that's where you have a moment in your onboarding process to begin the enculturation, where people begin to understand at least what we're shooting for. The problem of presenting a great framework is you only get credit to the degree you live up to it, but at least
Yeah.
you've raised the flag, says, well, this is our intent. Help us do it well. Because everyone at least leads themselves. And so you also need to lead, develop, and care for yourself. Those are your primary responsibilities. Other people can't make you grow. They can provide opportunities and encouragement. But ultimately, someone has to lead themselves well And if they do that over time and are competent in their work, they will eventually be asked to lead others, even if it's just in your family. But eventually, pretty much everybody ends up with some type of a leadership role of influence, and needing some clarity on how to do that well is so helpful.
Yeah, and I do see, as we were talking about competent in people being incompetent leaders, and I think that development aspect of bringing a great technician or a manager or a person who's working in department, moving them into a management role. If they haven't been developed, then they're not going to become a great leader. And I think that the organization is at fault for that. So, and those are the kinds of things I think that happen um, with regard to losing that initial impetus that starts up. Is that what you have found also?
Yes, yes. And understanding what are our best opportunities, our best moments. When do people need this content? So they need it when they first come in the company to get an overall idea in terms of their self leadership, et cetera, and how the company's trying to lead. Then when they first get promoted to being a manager, and they're all of a sudden, for the first time, not just an independent producer, to
Mhm.
cover it again, but now in terms of real people, maybe even a month into the job. So they know, okay, who's looking to you for leadership? You've got these three people. What does lead look like? What does develop look like? What does care look like? And how can you go about that? And of course, nobody's equally good at all three or drawn to all three. Some people are more naturally care type people. Some people are real teachers. They just can't not teach. When I used to
Yeah.
play tennis, my parents would say, Henry, everybody doesn't want your tennis tips when you're playing tennis because I'm coaching the other person. Uh, get your arm back and everything. And then the lead part. So helping a new manager think in terms of lead, develop, and care, uh, and bringing that in at the times that they most need it.
Right. And so how do you help organizations? I assume you are still working with organizations
Yes.
or executive leaders. How do you implement that in an organization, especially when things are kind of chaotic and
Yeah.
you come into.
Well, the first thing is to, have the people that hold some overall responsibility. It may not be the CEO, but at C-suite level, the CIO, the COO, um, to have them. What I did with the CIO of a large bank here in South Carolina was I first coached that person in it, and then we did a seminar with his whole leadership team of his directors, and and then we also have a video course. So there are different ways you could get it. There's a book called Lead, Develop, Care by my colleague, Terry Cook,
Mhm.
and a study guide. So that's the cheapest way. Just get the book and go through the study guide and then do it with people. There's the online video course that we have. We also come in, do on-site seminars and coaching. So there are different ways to get at it.
And so many of the clients that I work are solo entrepreneurs, and so they may not have direct reports and employees, but they certainly do have contractors and virtual assistants. How do you develop uh, lead, develop, and care in an organization like that?
Again, sometimes your role is a positional one of leadership, but there are other times it's just influence. The question I like to ask is who looks to you for leadership? And that all of a sudden opens up a whole nother thing. And so the lead develop care model, the key word of it is intentionality. You're intentionally leading, intentionally developing, intentionally caring. Uh, and so you're thinking, oh, what do I need to bring for this person to really succeed in getting the task done? What might be next steps of growth for this person or for us as a team? And are there any care issues? The develop and care brings to the forefront that people are people. They're not just means to an end.
Yeah.
And and actually people can sort of feel when you start getting intentional and not with a like an agenda, but you're like you said, you're there to serve and you're there to show interest in them as a person and not just for what they can do.
Right. And so uh, while you're doing this develop and care, you do run into some difficult conversations and situations. how do you deal that from that perspective, from your framework's perspective?
Well, it, the funny thing about develop is things that people most need to be developed in, they probably don't want you to bother.
Right.
They've already learned the things that were easy to learn and made them feel good about themselves. But the uncomfortable truths is that you talk too much or you have bad breath or whatever it is,
Mhm.
uh, that's a little tougher. And so that's why we talk about becoming a trusted leader. Because if a person feels like you're truly interested in their success, and that you also do care about them, they'll be more open to develop. So usually we'll say if you like if you're coming into a new situation, you start off more because it's not a linear. You lead, then develop, then care. It depends. What the question is, what's most needed now? So when you first begin leading, if you come into a new team, for example, you would start more with the care part of knowing and connecting, learning, coming in with humility, a servant attitude, then move into leading because that is your job, and then finally, with the respect you might gain from doing those first two, then as you begin to approach an area that's really a roadblock in a person's life, you have greater chance to gain a hearing. But develop isn't just about problems; it's also about people's future capacity. So it might be
Yeah.
developing them and encouraging them to the next level. A key area of development, for example, particularly in IT, but in pretty much all areas, medicine, law, is that people that are really, really good at what they do then are put in charge of other people, and they're really not very good at what to do at that point. And that's a key developmental moment to say you need to really lead at the level you've been asked to lead at. And when you always default to what's easiest and where you kind of get your drug because you do this so well, you do it better than they do. When you do that, you begin to fail them as a leader. So let's talk about how can you lean into this new level that you're called to serve in.
Yeah, I think that happens, that's happened to me, in fact, as I was, uh, in a growing company. Some of the challenges I think of leadership is that when they're, especially when they're bootstrapping or they're trying to develop a company, is they tend to work in the company versus on the company. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to get to that. So what are some of the ways that you can work around that? I guess maybe it starts with intentionality, but you just have to make time for those kinds of things.
Well, and also you realize when you read stuff, it's like it's all about again in the business world. Of course you have to make a profit, so
Yeah.
it is 95% about the task. But when it's 100% about the task, you really the human factor just gets leached out. And even though people initially come on because you give them an opportunity and they get paid, that's initially feels like it's good enough, but with time, it really begins to erode because people can feel how little they mean to you, how little they're on your radar. What I sometimes encourage leaders to do is, if you're working with anybody, um, ask yourself the question: how important is that person in what we're doing? Is it well, if they have 5 direct reports, just say, um, or even just one administrative assistant. How important is that person? Well, they're very important. They're
Right.
key to what I'm doing. Are they important enough for 15 minutes a week? Well, they can't say no because they just said the person was so important, for my 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Say, "Well, what if you had Monday morning or some or Friday afternoon, you had 1 hour of power, 1 hour of intentionality where you're going to actually think about that person just for 15 minutes, uh, and think, what do they most need from me now? Is it more lead, develop, or care? Is there any aspect of the subpoints of setting direction, align, motivate, manage, and in terms of their development, as far as a know, connect, provide, what do they need right now? And you, for just a few moments, you take your eyes off of the task and all the things going on, and you just think about that person and say, is there something that comes to my mind as I think intentionally about them? What do they need from me to succeed?
I like that.
So that's a very practical, simple thing. It's at a low cost, but actually people can feel whether or not you've been thinking about them or you just a lot of times leaders will think, well, I show my great trust and respect for them by giving them something. I leave them alone and they feel so good about themselves, But the person often feels like you just abandoned me. I mean, you obviously don't care. And so having some guidelines on how can you be more intentional with the people themselves, not that it's the only thing, but again, it's living out the values I can tell that you have as well, that people are important. And I want to communicate that, I value them, they're visible, and I'm interested in their success, and I'm not just off doing my own thing, only calling them when I have a complaint or something I want.
I like that too. What about um, successes that you've had, or maybe some dismal failures that you had along the way implementing this with organizations? Because not everybody is going to be 100% successful at this. What are some of the maybe glowing successes and some of the failures that you've learned along the way that people should be watching for?
Well, we've been, like I said, I haven't done the part in the military. Just over the last year, in one of the branches of the military, we presented this seminar 40 times all over the world: Korea, Hawaii, Alaska, Colorado. It gets a 95% positive rating, of either extremely helpful or helpful, across all the officers we presented it to. And the main comments are, this should be presented to every officer in this branch of the armed services. So we're trying to follow up on that.
Hmm.
I'd say, and when I'm working with the bank, with the law firm, uh, the one of the main obstacles is just the chaotic nature of the marketplace and how things. It's almost like you're at war, incoming,
Yeah.
and and so many pieces for the C-level leader, for their direct reports who have managers under them and people under them. And so it's so easy just to be reactive and not have any aspect of being proactive. That's one of the things why we like this model, because you can always remember it. When sometimes people will talk about other types of approaches. I won't name any because they're all good, but I don't want to imply anything negative. But so I'll ask them, well, what is the model? And they think, well, let's see, I think there were 5 points. They can't remember. And so one of the things we like about ours is you've always got with you. You could say it in 4 seconds, and yet it's built out enough that it's quite helpful. So I'd say the chaotic environment, where they're just, whether it's a merger or a cyber attack or different things like that, it's like the game of Jumanji, where all of a sudden, all this herd of buffaloes runs through the living room.
Yeah.
And that's why having something that's simple and straightforward, the lead developed care model isn't so much what you do, it's how you do everything you do. It's the lens through which you look at things. So it can become a template that you always carry with you, in the way you look at things. For example, a situation comes up with an employee or with a customer or something, and ask yourself the question, well, okay, at the end of the day, what really is the issue here? What do you think is the issue? Then the second question is, do you think this is more of a lead, develop, or care issue? And you think about that. And this helps you kind of diagnose what might be most helpful, because there may be many aspects, but if you can get some simplicity, some clarity, by using this model in a diagnostic way, it can often help you know what's next that would be helpful.
Right. And what are maybe some of the pushbacks or obstacles that people who are trying to implement this, what do they encounter? And do they go screaming, or do they adopt it easily?
Well, a nice thing about it is, once you see it, you think, well, yeah. I mean, it's like, why didn't I even think about that? It's not
Yeah.
like invented something brand new. Great leaders that we meet say, this is now puts words to what I already do instinctively. I mean, I'm sure you probably lead like this, Paul, but it gives you a clarity and a way to do it. I'd say one of the main issues I'm seeing, like with lawyers, for example, but I've heard the same thing is true of doctors, is that when people are further along in their leadership, and they're usually the ones that are the gatekeepers for it coming into their company, they think, well, I've made it this long without that. I don't need that, you know? And
Yeah.
so they may say, well, do it with my people. But then of course they're a bad example because they're not doing it. So if it's so good, why don't you do it? So I would say that, older entrenched leaders that are mostly successful because they really add value in terms of clientele or expertise and things like that. They get away with continually
Mhm.
not leading, developing, and caring. And they're not only not doing it, they're also a bit of a roadblock for it to enter into the company.
Yeah.
It's the humility of upper level leaders who are thinking, I always want to get better and I want my people to do well. That's usually where you've got a better opportunity.
Yeah, there are so many times you have that amazing technician who's the rainmaker, and they don't want to enter things into their CRM. They don't want to follow the procedures, and that really, excuse me, that really affects negatively the people that they are leading because they aren't leading by example. They they So it really makes it hard for the people who are trying to implement change, uh, to be successful at it. And that technician might not be an executive leader. They might just simply be really super good at what they're doing.
And sometimes the lead developed care model can backfire on you a little bit because if you're the lower level people find out about, then they'll probably find themselves saying, "Well, I knew he wasn't a good or she wasn't a good leader, but now I tell you why."
Right.
I can become an unfortunate a source of criticism. That's why it's kind of nice to get it in at a higher level. For example, I've worked for 4 years with a CIO at a large bank that's over a 20 state area. And so the IT department has like 250 people.
Wow.
And they just went through a huge cyber attack, you know, one of those ransomware things, and were up for 3 or 4 days straight fixing it. But they dodged it. They were like 5% of the companies that were able to dodge that. And I'm coaching all of his direct reports. And I said, well, what did you notice about his leadership during that time of crisis? And they said, oh, he was fantastic. You know, I mean, what a great leader. So but that whole department is learning lead develop care and now pushing it down to the next level. So by by modeling it over time, it really begins to win a following.
Yeah, I think I think I echo the idea that this should be taught. Leadership should be taught at all levels. And when you do go to college or when you're indoctrinated or you come into a company, that should be something that they share with you. I really I like frameworks. I like systems and formulas, and which is how I discovered and how I got into IT was my father said when I lost a job in the factory when I was very young, uh, he said get into computers or management or both, and so I did that. And but I didn't. I took the fast track because I needed to have an income, and so I took a certificate kind of course, a trade course in IT and programming,
Right.
and that's what launched my career. And I started out in sales and ended up doing some programming, and then all of a sudden I'm doing installing medical and dental office systems, and then eventually became a CIO of a $50 million company along the way. And that was just by iterating through, doing, kind of stumbling my way through.
Yeah.
But you pick up a lot of things along the way.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, and when you think about lead developing care, you realize from what all of us know about our current society and where it seems to be moving, you're always going to have the lead part because you actually have to get done. You're competing in the marketplace. If you don't accomplish the task, you're going out of business. So you always have to succeed in the lead part of the setting direction, aligning, motivating, managing. But people also now more and more come into the workplace from broken backgrounds, troubled past. You know, there are different issues from family, society. So the care part is becoming increasingly essential and also expected. If people don't feel like they're respected and cared for, they resent it. And now with the as far as the developed part, with the base of knowledge changing so rapidly, there's no course in college that can adequately prepare anyone for any field. You have to always be learning and growing, and it's pushing the learning and growing back to the place of work because that's where you are most of the time. So when a leader can bring lead, develop, and care, I believe it's the model for the 21st century.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And so we are getting close to our end of time. I have to ask you, since you're a history buff, if you could meet any figure in history, who would that be and why? And what would you ask? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, well, I'd have to say I'd love to meet Jesus, and
Yeah.
I'm planning on that someday. But it would. But there are tons of people like that. I'm really looking forward to interview if I ever get the chance. Uh, but that would be wonderful to, or will be, to talk with him someday.
And what would you ask him?
Wow. Well, I'd want a lot more details about everything that happened.
Yeah, me
The
too.
accounts in the Bible are pretty bouillon cube. I like the full soup.
Yeah.
Start at the beginning. There's so little was said about your growing up years, and uh, anyway, yeah, a lot on that.
Yeah, that's a tough question, isn't it? Some of the as I get older and my parents have passed, and my grandfather was a historical a very successful athlete who played with Jim Thorpe uh, at Carlisle, actually, for Pop Warner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, and I have a history historian, a retired lawyer who's a historian, amateur historian, doing an article on my grandfather, and my brother Richard and I, both our older siblings have passed, and there's a lot of history about our family that we really don't know and understand. And I
Mhm.
think that's really important to know uh, those kinds of things. And I was just talking to him yesterday. He retired after many years working, and I was asking him about different people in our family that, because we're doing this exploration of our history, that come up, and he said, who was that? And how were they related to us again?" And those are kind of things that I would like to know. I would ask my grandfather about some of that stuff, because
Yeah.
he never talked about his successes. He just talked about his Indian, Native American heritage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a whole 40-page document that was written by a great aunt
Uh-huh.
uh, that details so many interesting stories of the 1800s from my family. So yeah, I love looking into that.
Yeah. So, Henry, as we wrap up with your final words, what else would you like people to know? And also, what are three things that our listeners and viewers can do to put these ideas into action? This
Three
lead,
things.
develop, care.
Yeah, three things. With lead develop care, you at least need to do that with yourself, with your family. But there are probably situations in work as well that you would find help with that. And so the first thing I'd say is be humble enough to keep learning and growing. Secondly, lean into gaining clarity and skill with leading yourself and others. And third, I'd like to challenge you to, in the leadership you do bring, lead with a developmental mindset. Always be thinking growth. You always ask yourself two questions: what needs to be done, and who can be developed as we do it? And so, leading with a developmental mindset. And I'd love to let you know we have a website, smartleadership.co, smartleadership.co. We're offering a 50% off of all products. And there's also the book on Amazon, Lead Develop Care
Mhm.
by Terry Cook. That's excellent. And but thanks so much for letting me join you today.
Oh, and also, yeah, folks, use the coupon code Paul while you're at the smartleadership.co for 50% off all of their leader development products. Coupon code Paul, Paul, in case so. Well, thanks again, Henry. This has been enlightening and inspiring. I want to check out that book and also your website. So, so long for now. And remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyan and Henry Clay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyan. where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.